A group of community members is seeking to designate Tom's Diner in Denver as a historical landmark, against the wishes of its owner, Tom Messina. Messina has said he has plans to sell the property for $4.8 million to a developer who wants to build an 8-story apartment building. If the Denver City Council approves the landmark designation, Messina's plans will need to change. Ian, what's your stance on this issue? This is a particular thing about Colorado and Denver growth right now and its history and apartment buildings, everything else. There's everything to choose from here. What's your take?
Well, as a Lakewood resident whose voters just decided to side with the Flat Earth Society on growth and pass a very stupid 1% growth cap in our city, I've got sympathy for the folks in Denver. However, as a former Denver resident and a fan of Tom's Diner, I lived on 16th and Logan when I worked at the Capitol and used to go there every Sunday, eat breakfast, and do a crossword puzzle, and I love that place. This guy built a business that is now worth something in the location that he built, and I think he should be able to sell the building to whoever he wants and do whatever he wants with it. I mean, it's kind of odd that the government would force somebody to hold on to something they're not done with. What they do with the building afterwards, I think, is part of the question, too. And I just hope it goes toward at least some affordable housing because it's such a need in the city right now. But I'm not like one of these weird NIMBY liberals who wants to stop all growth from happening. People want to move here. They're moving here in droves. I think it's a great thing. We need to make sure we have the housing stock for them. And I also just find it very odd that people would want to force someone who wants to sell the business they spent their life building to have to hang on to it for, reasons that they seem to have, but he doesn't. It's very odd.
Natasha, it's easy to see both sides of this. I think if you've been there before, like Ian has, it's a cool place. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Pulp Fiction for my generation, but it's a pretty cool place. But then on the other hand, if a bunch of people who weren't related to me came and told me what I could or couldn't do with my house, that was going to completely change my future retirement plans, what I was going to do with my resources, that would really tick me off. Where are you at on this, and how do you think the Denver City Council is going to vote?
That is a very good question because I don't know. I think one of the interesting things about conversations we've had at this table, but around the city in general, around gentrification and growth, is the conversation continues to change. It never feels like, oh, we've already addressed this. We know how to handle this situation. It keeps on transforming. And not surprisingly, it would be the conversation would continue along the Colfax corridor. I mean, not only Tom's Diner, but I love driving up and down that street. Ever since I've moved to Denver, it is a place I like to do. I like to just go up and down the entire length at least once a year to see what has changed, because it really is an example of how much is happening in the city on any given day. And whether or not it becomes a building that is historically preserved or not, I think it is going to open more conversations that will build on the conversations that are already happening. And if I could predict what the council will do, especially with new members on it, we don't really have a track record for many of these council members to know how they might vote on this issue. We can take a guess for some of them, but I think it'll be a very interesting conversation.
Patty, you wrote about this for Westward. What are the details that we need to know about this issue?
Well, so Tom's Diner, it was circa 1967, kind of Jetson-looking kind of architecture known as Googie. It's California coffee shop architecture. It's not the only example in Denver. You've got Bastions, you've got the Denver Diner. There are others out there, and but the Landmark Commission voted unanimously on this recommendation, both for history and the architecture and where it is geographically. But they don't take into account what the owner wants, and what the owner wants is to reap the benefits of his 20-plus years of hard work in a building that was not considered historic when he bought it. And although it could qualify nationally, the national registration is not as draconian as Denver's would be. So I think it is going to be a real flashpoint when it comes before City Council. They're going to have to make a tough decision, which is, do you save old Denver? Do you save with the rights of a property owner?
David, speaking of the City Council, 5 new members. Also, I'm not sure if we know exactly what the other members are going to do. How do you think this all comes out?
I don't know, but I think Ian said it very well, and this is really just a form of theft. If there's some building that some people in the community, five NIMBY neighbors, and by the way, Tom and his family are just as much part of the community as these selfish people are. If you don't like it, if you want to keep some building the way it is, go buy it for a fair market price, or convince the city council to spend $4.8 million to buy this building. Don't take away the guy's major resource that he built, and that the city council and the planning commission and the selfish neighbors didn't build. This, in a city where we are so crunched for housing, this is affordable housing, whatever the apartment building is, because it increases the supply and thereby helps lower the price. And what the Planning Commission and the Selfish Gang of Five have done is send a signal to every architect building in the city now and in the future: don't do anything interesting. Make it bland. Use these cookie cutter condos as your model so that nobody in the future will ever be able to claim that your interesting building can get confiscated by the government.
And for all those folks that thought this society was just hopelessly polarized, we've never been this far apart, here we are at the Colorado Inside Out table, Ian Silveri, David Kopel, on the exact same page. You are welcome, Colorado. Have faith that we can come together.